Hey guys, and welcome to my rotation guide for the Power Bladesworn. I will go over the full DPS variant and the banner variant since they share the same rotation. However, the banner variant has a slightly different opening. As always, I will first go over some of the basics about the class and the new elite specialization, then go over some of the important traits that influence our rotation, and then lastly we're going to look at the rotation step by step. So for the Bladesworn, the new profession mechanic is going to be that our F1 makes us enter Gunsaber. This replaces our weapon skills, and as a trade-off we cannot weapon swap in combat as a Bladesworn. Gunsaber acts exactly like a weapon swap. So for example, if I get into combat here and then I enter the Gunsaber, you will see it puts the sheathing of the Gunsaber on a 5-second cooldown. Similarly, if I exit Gunsaber, I can do this by sheathing the Gunsaber with my F1 or by using weapon swap to get out of it. It will once again put it on a 5-second cooldown. Now leaving the Gunsaber like this will cancel any weapon skill that you're currently casting, similar to how a weapon swap would do it. And then if we are in our Gunsaber, the main skills we quickly want to look at are the 4 skill, which just does the spin and it blocks projectiles while we're casting it. The 3 skill is a ranged ability that shoots this explosive at the enemy. And then the 5 skill can be quite nice for mobility. It is this dash forward. And then we also have a regular auto attack chain of 3 hits in here. The main skill we want to look at here is the 4 skill, like I said. It blocks projectiles while it is active. And the main important part to notice about this is that when we cast it, it does the damage right away. So I will quickly show you. I will cast my 4 skill, I will exit my Gunsaber like halfway into the cast, and you will see it still finished the damage without finishing the cast. Now next up you will probably see these bullet icons and the bar below it. This bar below it that we already filled up here is called Flow. It replaces the adrenaline that other warrior specs have. It acts very similarly, but there's one key difference, which is how it interacts with traits and skills. Usually on other warrior specs, all skills and traits grant us a flat amount of adrenaline. However, on Bladesworn, instead, most skills and traits grant us a flow rate. So for example, if we look at To the Limit, on other specs it would give us a flat amount of adrenaline. However, on Bladesworn it gives us positive flow, which means we gain additional flow per second, and in this case we gain it for 15 seconds. Now just by being in combat, basically we have a positive flow rate of 1. Now if we press To the Limit, you will see it goes up to 2 for the next 15 seconds. Now what do we do with the flow rate? We can use it to enter our Dragon Trigger, our F2, and it will consume some flow to build up these charges. Now what we can do with the charges is we can use one of our first 3 skills. This is probably the most memorable thing about Bladesworn, where you can see the 1 skill deals massive damage in front of us in a single hit. And then we have the 2 skill, which is a mobility skill, so you can see it puts me quite far if maximum charged. And then lastly, we can quickly look at the 3 skill, which is a ranged ability. So as you might have also noticed, the Dragon Trigger counts as the Gunsaber, so this means as soon as we enter Dragon Trigger, we will get our 5-second Gunsaber cooldown. If we exit Dragon Trigger early, we still have that same cooldown and we will be put in Gunsaber before we can swap back to our main weapon set. Now the main thing to note about Dragon Trigger is that while we are channeling this, we cannot move, otherwise we will cancel the cast. I can show you here, I move and it will instantly cancel the Dragon Trigger. However, this would leave us pretty vulnerable, so what we can do to prevent this is we can use our 4 and 5 skill in case there are some incoming attacks. Our 4 skill is an instant cast skill that grants us H's for 2 seconds, so we need to time it well to block an incoming attack. And then our 5 skill is a shadow step that can just blink us to the targeted location. And once again, this can just be used to avoid incoming mechanics while we are otherwise vulnerable in our Dragon Trigger. Now, as always, with a new elite specialization, we also gain access to some new utility skills. In this case, they are called ornaments. We're going to mainly take a look at 2 of them. Some of the ornaments gain a different bonus effect if we already benefit from their normal effect, as you can see with the flow stabilizer. Normally it gives us 1 additional flow rate and it gives us some fury. However, if we already benefit from fury, then we will gain 2 additional flow rate instead. As you can see, this is also on a charge system, as are most of the ornaments besides the elite one. The heal skill, for example, also acts in a different way, where you heal yourself and enter stim state, and then if you're already in stim state, you instead gain some boons. The main ornament we're going to use is the one I already talked about, the flow stabilizer. However, there is a variant where you can also use the elite ornament, tactical reload, which reloads ammo on all of your profession skills. Now I can quickly show you that this doesn't just go for our utility skills. For example, we already know the X3 skill from our core warrior. So if I throw them both out and use tactical reload, it will recharge 1 of the ammunition there. Similarly, it also works with our gun saber. If we use our 4 skill here and use tactical reload, it will give us back 1 gun saber 4. And this also increases the reload of all skills that you currently cannot see on your bar. So if we use this while we are on our axe pistol set, we will also reload anything that is in our gun saber and vice versa. The other ornaments are not really worth talking about too much. There's one that is a break stun and an evade, and then the other ones just do some damage. Once again, work with the count recharge. Then lastly, we also obviously gain a new weapon with the new elite spec, which is the pistol in the offhand, which brings us the 2 skills Gunstinger and Dragon's Roar. Now, I will first talk about Dragon's Roar because it makes more sense in this order. As you can see, it has a maximum count of 6. And what it does is once I use it, it fires all the ammo that is stored onto the enemy. So you see it fired 6 shots there. And now if I get it back, I can also fire it again, but it will only do the first shot. It also moves us back slightly. However, that isn't too big of a deal since we can just immediately walk back to the enemy. Now the 4 skill dashes us forward and grants us Aegis for 3 seconds, so we can technically use this to block an attack. However, we also want to use it in our rotation since it's a very strong skill, because after using it, besides dealing damage, it also fills up our pistol 5 skill by 3 charges. So if I use my pistol 5 and spend all 6 charges and then use my pistol 4, I will have 3 charges again immediately. This also means since we will be on the axe pistol set for quite some time during our rotation and we visit it quite frequently, we will not always be at max charges for our pistol 5. So whenever we see pistol 4 up, we will usually use it before the pistol 5 in order to recharge the count to do more damage with our pistol 5. Now next up, let's look at some of the important traits that will influence our rotation. First of all, we're going to take a look at the discipline trait line. Specifically, first of all, we have fast hands here, which I already talked about earlier. It reduces our sheathed and unsheathed gun saber from 10 seconds down to 5, since it counts as a weapon swap. Without this, we would be stuck in gun saber a lot longer, which would just make our rotation a lot worse. Obviously, we bring doubled standards. In case we are the banner warrior, it will make our banners 10-man, and it will give us swiftness when we place or pick them up, as well as give us some bonus stats. Swiftness, of course, on any warrior build with discipline is quite nice, because we will deal 10% more damage thanks to warrior sprint. And then if we are on the full DPS variant, it will still give us the extra bonus stats if someone else is providing the banners for us. And then lastly, we have Versatile Rage at the start, where we gain adrenaline on weapon swap. And as you can see, like I mentioned earlier, it will just give us a positive flow rate for 3 seconds instead on the Bladesworn. And then we have Axe Mastery, which grants us bonus flow whenever we crit with an axe skill. And since we are on 100% crit chance, this means any axe skill we do will increase our flow. Note that this is one of the very few exceptions where we gain a direct flow rather than a set flow rate. And then lastly, we're going to look at Bladesworn. First of all, we have this trait Unseen Sword. I deactivated this earlier when showing the other things, and the reason for this is whenever we swap weapons, we strike all nearby foes, and this can also trigger if we are not in combat. So this means if I go close to the enemy and I go into my gun saber, it counts as a weapon swap, so you saw it put me in combat.
Let's do this.
The reason I took this off earlier is so I could properly show the gun saber 4 off with swapping out, because otherwise, as you can see, it will always do this follow-up hit, so it's a bit harder to see whether the original skill hit or not. So you want to be careful to not get into combat with this skill. You can go in and out of gun saber if you are far enough away from your target, because the trait will only trigger if you are close to the target or in combat. So as you can see right now, I'm far away from the golem. I go into my gun saber and nothing happens. But if I go too close and weapon swap, then the trait will trigger and put me in combat. Besides that, in the actual fight, it's just going to be some nice extra damage and increases our flow rate a bit. Then we have Dragon Scale Defense, which gives us 3 seconds of stability when we enter Dragon Trigger. This is pretty useful because, like I said earlier, even though we have the Aegis and the link in our Dragon Trigger, this is just an extra layer of defense against incoming attempts at interrupting our Dragon Trigger. Then we have Fierce as Fire, which gains us increased strike damage for each round of ammunition we spend for 1% extra damage for 15 seconds, up to a maximum stack of 10. Now keep in mind that this will give you 1% for each round of ammunition you spend. So for example, if I use my Axe 3, I will get 1 charge of this. However, like I talked about earlier, with our pistol 5 we can have up to 6 charges and they will fire all at once. So if I use my pistol 5 here, you will see I gain 6 extra rounds for a total of 7 now. The first one expired, so now we're back to 6 just from the pistol 5. Next up we have Guns and Glory. We gain Ferocity after casting an explosion and it stacks in duration up to 10 seconds. We have a few explosion skills here. For example, our pistol 5 is an explosion. And then once again, if I use my pistol 5 here, you will see I get the maximum duration of 10 seconds because each round of ammo that we fired counts as 1 explosion. In our gun saber we also have some explosions, mainly our 3 skill, but our 2 and our 5 skill work too. Our 4 skill that we will mainly be using, however, is not an explosion. And now the last trait is Unyielding Dragon, where our Dragon Slash becomes unblockable, ignores blindness, and stuns foes on hits. Dragon Slash means if we go into Dragon Trigger, we have the first 3 skills. They are all called Dragon Slash and then an extra, so these 3 skills are going to be unblockable, ignore blindness, and stun enemies. So it will do some break bar damage as well. And you will see it says Defiance Break 100. However, this gets higher the more ammo we have or the more charges we get up, basically. The bonus of this is also that you gain might whenever you convert flow into charges. So as soon as we enter Dragon Trigger, while our flow goes down and our charges go up, we gain some extra might. So now let's look at the rotation step by step. We're going to be starting with the opener. The idea of the opener on both the DPS and the banner variant is that we build up enough flow to get into Dragon Trigger as quick as possible to use our biggest damaging skill, which is the 1 skill in Dragon Trigger with all 10 charges built up. On the DPS variant we have Flow Stabilizer, which will make it easier to get into our Dragon Trigger fast and build up the necessary flow for that. So we just want to use our biggest damage skills and then go right into Dragon Trigger. In order to achieve this, before the fight we will quickly precast both charges of Flow Stabilizer as well as our To The Limit. And then once we enter combat, we use Dragon Roar in order to fire all the bullets, then a Gunstinger, Pistol 4 to recharge 3 of the bullets for the next loop, and then we will use our Axe 2 and go into Dragon Trigger. So I will quickly show this once. I will use my flow stabilizer and to the limit, both charges, 5, 4, 2, and in the drag trigger, and you will see it will build up 10 charges from the flow we have obtained. So now, basically, as soon as we are at 10 charges, obviously we want to immediately use our 1 skill. And then we will still have a slight cooldown on our gun saber. So what we will want to do then is we will use the 4 skill and then exit the gun saber to go back to our axe pistol set. I will quickly respawn the golem and show this again properly, including the gun saber 4. Oh, and then I forgot about what I said earlier with the trait that puts us into combat.
It's over.
So obviously we want to quickly wait until our flow rate is at 0, just so I can show that we indeed have enough flow to get to the charges that we need. And once it is gone, so now we precast both of our skills, and now we use pistol 5, 4 to go into drag trigger, and as soon as we are at 10 charges we use 1, gun saber 4, and then we swap out. Now the next thing to keep in mind here is that we have our Fierce as Fire trait, which is the one that gives us extra damage after we spend ammo. So what we want to do here is, as soon as we enter drag trigger the first time, quickly before we actually use our 1 skill, we want to use our 4 and 5 skill to get the cooldown of them rolling and gain 2 extra stacks of Fierce as Fire. So what we will do is we will do the exact same opening, but as soon as we enter the drag trigger, we're going to use our 4 and 5 skill before pressing 1. Once again, I will quickly wait for the flow to go down, and then I will show this again. So we do our precast, then pistol 4, 5, 2, and drag trigger. And now before we reach max charges, we use 4 and 5. And exit our drag trigger by using 1, and then use gun saber 4 and weapon swap back to axe pistol. And this is where our general loop is going to start. Now for the banner variant, we do not have flow stabilizer. Normally we would have the Signet of Might. However, I just quickly took the Signet of Fury for demonstration purposes because I did not want to swap around the gear and still be at crit cap. So since we do not have the flow stabilizer, we will need to cast some additional skills at the start to gain enough flow for our first drag trigger. We're going to actually start in our gun saber. Once again, we will precast our to the limit. We're then going to use gun saber 4. Exit our gun saber in the middle of the cast because it will still deal damage like I mentioned earlier. And then we will do the same thing on our axe pistol set. We will use pistol 5, pistol 4, axe 2, and then we need 1 full axe auto attack chain before being able to go into drag trigger. So I will quickly show this with to the limit, 4, 5, 4, 2, 1 auto attack chain, and after the auto attack chain we go into drag trigger. And then we use our drag trigger at 10 charges. Now one quick thing to note for the opener is that pistol 4 moves us forward slightly, and if we are already in melee range it will waste a bit less time. So what you can do instead is you can use pistol 5, that will move you back, then you use axe 2 while moving back to the boss, and then you use pistol 4 afterwards. So you can swap the order of axe 2 and pistol 4. It's a minor difference, however, there technically is a difference that makes going axe 2 first a bit faster. So just get used to whichever one you feel like. So now that we have looked at the opening, we're going to take a look at the general loop rotation. There will be 2 different loops depending on whether pistol 4 is up or not, which will be every other loop. However, this alteration is very slight. Basically, if we don't use our pistol 4, we will just add in an extra axe 3 in order to fill the gap in terms of time before entering drag trigger again. So the general idea once again is after we have finished our drag trigger, we will use our gun saber 4, or if it's not up, our gun saber 3. And then we will exit our gun saber and be on our axe pistol set, where we will use pistol 5 first. Then we will use axe 2 and 3, then one full axe auto attack chain, and then we use the second axe 3 before entering Dragon Trigger. So I will quickly show this once. First of all, I'm going to quickly do the opening once again, and then once the opening is over, I will do the loop once.
Centering.
So I will use 4, exit, 5, 2, 3, one auto attack chain, one other 3, and then we can go into our Dragon Trigger again and repeat from the beginning. Now the next time we now would use Gunsaber 4, and then we go back to our pistol set. Now our pistol 4 is back up. So the way we're going to handle this is that we are going to use pistol 4 first, then we are going to use pistol 5, and then once again we use axe 2 and 3 and one auto attack chain. And since we use the pistol 4, we do not need to use a second throw axe to fill the gap. So I will quickly show this once again. We will just go into Dragon Trigger and then go from there. So I use Dragon Trigger, 4, swap out, 4, 5, 2, 3, and one auto attack chain. And now we can already enter Dragon Trigger again. So the idea behind the loop is going to be, first we start with the opener, then we do one loop without pistol 4, then we do one loop with pistol 4, and then we just repeat that all the time. No pistol 4, with pistol 4, and so on. Now one very small note about this is that you might not always have 2 charges of throw axe up. This should happen approximately every third loop without pistol 4, where you cannot use a second throw axe. In that case, you will just use one extra auto attack. Now, I also mentioned earlier that there is a different variant in terms of elite skill, which is the tactical reload, which reloads ammo on all of our skills by 1. And basically, if we are running with this variant, there's going to be one other loop, which is going to be when our tactical reload is up, which is always going to be in a loop without our pistol 4, since we use it the first time right after the opening. So the way the tactical reload loop would work is after we entered our Dragon Trigger, and then we used our 1 skill, Gunsaber 4, and got back to our axe pistol set, we're going to once again use pistol 5, same as earlier. However, before going into our axe skills, we're then going to use tactical reload. So we're going to use axe 5, tactical reload, 2, 3, and then one auto attack chain, and at that point we can go back into Dragon Trigger. I can also quickly show that this is actually true in terms of cooldowns. So we're going to go into our Dragon Trigger, Gunsaber 4, swap out, 5, tactical reload, 2, 3, and then one auto attack chain and go in. So you see the only difference here with this loop compared to the other loops is that instead of using the second throw axe or the pistol 4, we're just using tactical reload right after the pistol 4 skill. The pistol 5 skill, I mean, sorry. One benefit of this variant is that you will actually never run out of throw axes, since it also recharges that and skips one throw axe every other loop. So this means that the aforementioned problem of needing to do an extra auto attack instead of an X3 are not existent in this variant. Now, tactical reload has a 30-second cooldown, so it will come up every 4th loop. This means we're going to first do our opening, of course, and then we will use our tactical reload loop, then we will do a pistol 4 loop, then we will do a loop without pistol 4, then with pistol 4 again, and then we start all over and start with the tactical reload loop. Now the final part is some additional precasts you can do. Mainly we're going to take a look at the Fiercest Fire buff, which I mentioned earlier, where you gain 1% extra damage for 15 seconds with a maximum of 10 stacks after spending a round of ammunition. Luckily, all of our Gunsaber abilities, except for our auto attack, are ammunition skills, and we are not using 2 and 5 in the rotation ever, and the first time we use 3 is rather late into the rotation as well. This means we can just go ahead and cast 2, 5, 5, 2, and we have 4 stacks of Fiercest Fire. This means as soon as we enter combat with pistol 5, which spends our 10 charges on that skill, we will gain the remaining 6 stacks and be at maximum 10 stacks right away.
Almost there.
Now, one thing to be careful of here, if you're precasting the skill, keep in mind, like you just saw and like you saw earlier, Unseen Sword, if you swap in and out of Gunsaber, even out of combat, make sure to not be too close to the boss, otherwise this might trigger the boss and put you in combat. Also, if you do precast your Gunsaber 3, make sure to not have anything targeted, because if you just cast it here out in the open, it will not hit anything. But if you have something targeted, remember that it is a 900 range ability, so it will definitely put you in combat too. If the fight has already started, basically you couldn't predict that your group is going in soon, and the fight starts, then make sure to just not precast anything in your Gunsaber, because it is a DPS loss if you could already be hitting your other skills. So you just want to make sure that you get your To The Limit and Flow Stabilizer precasted. However, do not worry too much about the Gunsaber precast unless you know when your group is going to start. Like for example, if a ready check is up and then there's only one person missing and you still need to run in to pull the boss, you can cast some of your Gunsaber skills while running in. So now lastly, as always, I'm going to let a rotation play of myself doing the full rotation on the Golem ones. In the video, I will be using the full DPS variant instead of the banner variant, and I will not be using tactical reload, but instead keep the Signet up.
Felt